And I'm going to talk about some of the skills that we need to be successful. But rather than just giving you a boring bullet point list of you need to know this and you need to know this, what I wanted to do is start by reviewing kind of what actually is DevOps, what is it all about, why are we doing it, and then I'm going to discuss the things that we need to be able to do with reference to the overall, like the whole point. What is the point in the whole thing? It's a bit of an experiment. It's the first time I've delivered this presentation. I'm sorry if it goes wrong, but hopefully it won't. Let's go. Hi, my name's Alex. I've been helping folks to do database DevOps since 2010. I've done it in quite a lot of settings, using quite a lot of different tools. I used to work for Redgate. I don't anymore. They still like to call me a friend of Redgate. But the reality is I use SSDT or DBUp or Redgate or whatever the tools are available. They all do a good job. I'm a Microsoft MVP. I'm one of the organizers of Data Relay. Come along to it. Google Data Relay is a conference a bit bigger than this one. We travel across the country from Newcastle down to Bristol next month in October. So if you fancy coming along to that, 3 different tracks all talking about databasey, data, AI type stuff on the Microsoft platform. I'm also the founder of Speaking Mentors. As a conference organizer, I see that there aren't enough people getting into tech. I want to see more voices. I want to see more voices from different backgrounds. And as a speaker, I've seen the benefit of getting into speaking. It's wonderful for your career. It's a wonderful experience. It's definitely something to get involved in. If you want to get into speaking and you'd like a little bit of help from somebody that's done it before, go to speakingmentors.com. There are 40 different people, about 40 people, who have all said, I'm an experienced speaker and I'd like to give my time for free to somebody else that wants to get involved in speaking, just to give them a bit of a help or advice or whatever they need. Pretty generic. Go there, get in touch, pick a mentor, someone that you like, and hopefully that'll help us create more great tech speakers, and that'll be a good thing. Steph started off today showing Google Trends and data ops versus various different things. Is Steph in the room? Oh no, I'm going to neg on Steph while she's not even here. That's not fair. She's not here to do right of reply. So I've debated with Steph about the term data ops and stuff over and over and again. DevOps resonated with me when I first heard about it when I was a salesperson. It resonated to me because I saw the gulf between the sales division of my company and the engineering division of my company. How many people here have a really good relationship between the salespeople of their organization and the tech folk? Yeah, it doesn't really work, right? One person, well done. Pardon? Fantastic. Generally, sales and tech are really, really bad at communicating. And so when people started talking about dev and ops being really bad at communicating, I was like, yeah, I get that, I resonate with that. And actually, the truths of DevOps are much bigger than just dev and ops. The reason it's dev and ops is kind of an accident of kind of exactly where the movement came from. But for me, DevOps is much broader than just dev and ops. I know it's got a bad name. If we could choose a name all over again, maybe it wouldn't be DevOps, it would be something a bit broader, but I don't think it helps to come up with DevSecOps and Data Ops and Dev, insert my department here, Ops. I don't think that's useful. I think it's far better for us to have a joined up view of what the goal is, rather than all having our own independent view of what the goal is, and then we end up with our own different silos. That's just my 2 cents. Not wanting to nag on the conference, love database DevOps, really, really cool. And now let's talk about how we do that. So the first thing I wanted to bring up, as probably many people have done, is the caveat that people get lost in tools and automation. And in the fantastic words of Gerald Weinberg, no matter what they tell you, it's always a people problem. I was just speaking to somebody here 5 minutes ago who came up to me and said, hey, I've got this technical problem. I have to work with this other team, and they won't give us access to do this thing, so I'm trying to come up with how to do this, and I'm trying to think of all different workarounds. And I'm like, look, this isn't a technical problem. And to be honest, if it was, I'm not qualified to solve it anyway. But actually, this is a problem of 2 different teams who are kind of working against each other and creating technical solutions because of the fact the teams aren't very good at working together. Who's your lowest common line manager? Someone at the C-level suite. It's like, well, there's your problem. You've got 2 different people interacting with tech, interacting with the same databases, but their lowest common manager is like on the board of directors. This isn't a very sensible way of doing business, and of course, these 2 different teams who are working with the same tech, working with the same tools, are fundamentally looking at it from different perspectives. So I'd like to, this is one of my favorite talks. Who's seen Simon Sinek Start With Why? Okay, it takes 15 minutes and it will completely change your worldview on building stuff. It's fantastic. Everybody go read it. You can buy the book if you want, but like there's a 15-minute TED presentation that's easy to Google and it says everything that's in the book, so go read that instead. Sorry, Simon Sinek, I've just probably done a disservice and sold you out of a book. But he basically gives you the concept of people don't buy what you build, they don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Okay, nobody followed Martin Luther King because he wanted to change the laws on voting rights in the southern United States. People followed him because he had a dream, and you all know what that dream was, and you probably all agree with it. Okay, how many the leaders and the politicians that we follow have some sort of dream or idea or something that they're trying to do? They're not worrying about how they source control databases. Okay. The thing that your company does, I hope it has a well-articulated mission. What is it that your company is there to do? Right, let's do that. DevOps isn't how we do that. Well, the thing to remember is everything that we're doing, DevOps is teaching us, is a way of working to achieve that. Okay, so let's start with what your why might be. The why might be, I want to go and do a thing, I want to save the polar bears. Great. That's a great mission statement, go do that. I want to create a great product that all my customers are going to care about. I want to make people really, really happy. Great, I don't know, I've not articulated your mission statement, that's your job. Okay? If you're selling this if you're trying to sell this idea of DevOps or these things that you want to do to someone within your company, you might be selling them based, we need to do this really quickly. We want to do it really, really reliably. I want it to be the trusted person in the room. We want to win, we want to take over the whole market. We want to have more time with our family. Like, these are all valid reasons why we might want to adopt DevOps. These are the things, and when you're pitching DevOps to people around the organization, you need to figure out what it is that they want. And you need to be able to pitch it in the right way. And there are so many different benefits of DevOps that you can basically pick and choose a bit of DevOps that you want to sell to the different person in order to affect that sort of cultural change, the way of working that we work together. Obviously, if you're working to anyone at the shareholder level, you know kind of how to sell it. There are various fairly easy ways to say, hey, we're going to screw stuff up less often, and we're going to get to market quicker, and we're going to have better products and more market share that's going to involve them getting richer at the end of the day. So I guess I want to start with kind of that why. This is the reason why we do DevOps, okay? The next bit is the how, and that's probably all the stuff that kind of you traditionally think of DevOps. We need to work together in teams, we need cross-functional teams, we need to source control our stuff, we need to put together some sort of CI build test process. So how did DevOps come about? Well, there's kind of an agile-y type thing about it. You've probably seen, everybody know the difference between waterfall and agile? Does anybody not know the difference between waterfall and agile? Okay. Waterfall is the old way that we used to build software. We used to do a bunch of requirements gathering at the beginning, then we'd have like a design phase, and we'd have a development phase, and we'd have a testing phase, and we'd have an integration phase, and we'd release it all in one day. After 3 years, we release our product for the first time, and we figure out, hey, apparently the market moved on in the last 3 years, and we kind of forgot because we were building a thing. Or actually, it turns out that when we tried to ship it all in one day, it went wrong, because it turns out we made a mistake 2.5 years ago, and we never figured it out. It turns out that if we move to a more agile type approach, where we have a team of designers and testers and developers and operations, the people that support it, all working together in kind of a 2-week sprint iteration, and we go through this whole kind of waterfall process every couple of weeks or every day or whatever, and have some sort of regular review point and try and ship small and often. It means that if we figured out that actually we're not onto a winner here, we figured that out after several weeks as opposed to 3 years. So I've burned a lot less money, and I've decided to start building something successful instead. It means that if I've misconceived exactly what it is that I want to try and build, or I've not quite understood what our customers want, then I have the opportunity to evolve my product as we go. It means that I can harness change as a competitive advantage. If there are changing requirements, I have the ability within my process to adopt those and end up creating a product that might not have been the same product that I would have built if I'd done it all in one go, but I'll probably get there more reliably, more successfully, and I'll end up with something that's a slightly better fit for the market. So that's basically what Agile was telling us. And it was telling us about software. DevOps took that a step further, and it started saying, well, we can do that with hardware too, and the way that we do that is infrastructure as code. If we start, rather than if our process for buying a new server isn't, I'm going to call someone from Dell on the phone, have a sales conversation with them, then they're going to load something onto like a forklift truck into a van, I'm going to drive it to my machine, my data center, and then I'm going to plug it in. That process takes a long time, right? Whereas if I can script out what I want my server to look at, I can say, I want a Windows 10 box with this software installed, and I want it networked in this particular way. I can just send that to AWS or Azure and say, build me 15 of those, please. Oh, I need 16. Build me another one. And I can do that much, much more quickly. I can respond to change. And it's much easier to manage those changes. So anyway, DevOps, one of the ways of looking at it is basically applying Agile to servers, and now increasingly databases as well. This is the way DevOps try to define the how. Kind of DevOps is a union of people, processes, and products to enable continuous delivery of value to our end users. Great, it's a nice soundbite, but what does that actually mean? Gene Kim has given us the 3 ways. So I guess what I'm saying here is DevOps has got lots of different people trying to define it in lots of different ways, but actually a lot of the same ideas come out. So Gene Kim talks about the 3 ways. First of all, we need to focus on how quickly can I get my idea into production, like how can I optimize for that. Second is how can I find out whether the thing that I put in production is actually valuable. Is it actually working? I thought that if I made the button blue instead of green, that I would delight my customers more, they'd be able to use the product better, more people would spend more money. Well, are they? Is it working? So those sorts of metrics that you want to be getting back, that's not just, is my product broken, but it's also, am I doing my thing better? Am I saving the polar bears better? Am I one step closer to saving the polar bears in the Arctic? So we want to be thinking about how we can track all that data, and eventually that creates this culture of continuous experimentation and learning, where every single thing that I do, I'm applying the scientific method to it. I'm not just getting on my soapbox and saying, I think we should make the button blue. I'm saying, I'll tell you what, let's A/B test this. We'll give a blue version to these people and a green version to these people. We'll see which one is better with respect to my goal. And that allows us to, in a very scientific way, build better, more reliable products, and also ensure that they're working at every step along the way. So this is kind of the overall goal, and we can tie that back to those kind of my higher level goal. What I'm actually doing, I'm not deploying a database. I'm helping to save the polar bears from extinction. And I'm doing that one step at a time, and I can measure each step along the way that I'm doing that better. And when we frame what we do like that, it helps all the people to work together and get aligned behind that goal, regardless of whether that person is a developer or a DBA or a data scientist or whatever it is. You all understand that you're a team working towards that higher goal. And that helps to create better collaboration, better teamwork, and ultimately better products and services, and we do more good. We're more likely to achieve our goals. One final way that people try to define what DevOps actually is, and this is the one that I'm really going to use today, is CALMS. People talk about this culture, automation, lean, metrics, sharing. These are the 5 things that we care about. This was originally proposed by John Willis. Actually, he came up with CAMS. It was Jez Humble who added lean. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, look, this is our how. So our why is whatever it is that you do. Saving polar bears or creating gambling companies, I don't know. Whatever it is that you do, that's your why. The how is we're going to do this stuff, and that's going to help us to do that better. Now we get to the what, and that's kind of actually what the pitch of this presentation is. What is it that you need to learn? Well, the things that you need to learn, I'm going to put in, I'm going to go through from a culture point of view, from an automation point of view, from a lean point of view, a measurements and a sharing point of view. I'm going to go through those one at a time, and I'm going to say, look, these are the things that we need to do to be successful at this, and that's how it all builds up to the whole, and kind of the whole point is actually that we have an organization that works together effectively. Making sense so far? Yeah? Cool, great. Okay, so what are we actually going to do? So let's look at culture. Well, first of all, who has tried to change a culture at an organization before, or kind of change a way that we do things? Easy job? Really, really hard, okay? If you want to change the way people think about things, there are various different models that you can come up with for organizational change. One of the ones that I found really useful is ADKAR. Awareness, desire, knowledge, ADAK, ability, and reinforcement, okay? You can't convince a CEO that they need to embark on a £15 million DevOps transformation project if you like that sort of thing. You can't convince them to part with that money if they're not even aware what DevOps is, if they don't see the point, if they don't understand if they just don't understand what it is, they're not going to invest that money. First of all, you need to make them aware of the thing. You can't convince a developer to start writing unit tests if they don't even know what a unit test is and how that helps them to achieve saving the polar bears. So the first thing you need to do is make people aware of it. Then you need to basically sell them on the concept. It's like, okay, you've heard of this DevOps thing, but it's really good and it's really going to benefit you because whichever benefit is associated with their life goal. Do they want to be the best? Do they want to make the most money? Do they want to get home and see their kids on time? I don't know, whatever it is. You basically need to phrase DevOps, the benefits of it, based on the person that you're talking to. Then there needs to be some sort of knowledge training process, some sort of implementation, proof of concept, like we need to try stuff out. If that works, then we need to make sure that our people and our teams are set up to be successful, they've got the right backing from management, they've got the right licenses involved, they've got all the infrastructure that they need, all of that sort of stuff. And then this stuff doesn't, like just because you put something in place doesn't mean it stays. How many people have kind of set up a great process and 6 months later nobody's using it? Yeah, a few people have done that. So it needs to be constantly reinforced. So the first thing, if culture is a foundation, we need to understand that actually, before I start talking about how to kind of automate lovely things, actually we need to fix a culture first. Like, I don't want to be automating the wrong thing. Who recognizes this picture, this video? The fact that not enough of you have your hands up means you all need to Google 10 plus deploys a day. This is the session that basically kicked off big time. It didn't necessarily kick it off, but it really brought the DevOps movement into the public domain. 5 minutes, excellent. This is John Allsport and Paul Hammond talking about how they deployed 10 times a day when they were at Flickr. This is about bringing those silos together. It's about collaborating. One of the things that came out of this is people don't tend to work in a dev team over here and a test team over here and an operations team over here. We now have smaller cross-functional teams who are responsible for the end-to-end life of a product. That means we're not incentivizing developers and operations with different goals. We actually have a team that all sit around a table together or all stand up around a whiteboard together and talk about the relative needs of developing the software and maintaining the software with respect to the goal, which is saving the polar bears or whatever else it is that you do. Okay, that's the way that we're setting up our organizations now. Now, I appreciate that many of you might not be in a position to kind of define the organizational structure of your organization. I probably need to be speaking to C-level folks for that. But at least having an understanding of kind of how the successful companies are working at the moment might help some of those ideas bubble towards the top. And you might want to think about how you can share those sorts of ideas with your managers. And we want to create that, again, that culture of continuous experimentation and learning. We need to be changing all of our mindsets to think about the scientific method rather than kind of thinking about how can I test this? I'm not just going to put in my soapbox feature that I think is really important. I'm actually going to figure out how I can prove it to the business with data. How can I test that? How can I show? Because it turns out people listen to the ideas when they can actually see the data to back it up, especially if they don't understand the ideas. So that's really important. Right. Automation. Like, okay, you've come to a what skills do I need to learn session on DevOps. You're going to want to learn some tools. Okay, so one is Git. How many people are using source control at the moment? Okay, the rest of you all need to learn how to use source control. If we're going to be scripting out and defining our code, our databases, our servers as code, then we need to be able to share that code some way. How many of you are using a source control system that's other than Git? That's why everybody needs to learn Git, okay? Git is basically winning the source control war. It is a sharing, networking type effect. If you want to collaborate with other people on code, you need to use the same tools that they're using, and so Git is basically the way that is winning that. If you want any proof of that, Microsoft invested 7.5 billion quid in buying GitHub when they had their own source control system that nobody wanted to use because they all wanted to use Git. So we're going to be using Git. Who knows what that logo is for? Okay? If you're on the Microsoft platform and you want to do any automation, the way that you do that is PowerShell. Okay, that is the language of automation for the Microsoft platform. If you're on the Microsoft platform, you're using PowerShell. Okay? If you're not on the Microsoft platform, fine, go use Maven or Bash or whatever else it is that you want to use. But if you're on the Microsoft platform, you're using PowerShell. Why? Because if we're going to automate stuff and we're going to collaborate on it together, it would be useful if we understand the same tools and we're using the same tools, right? Finally, now there's a whole bunch of different tools for continuous integration and automated builds and deployments and things. And I'm not saying you need to learn all of them, but some concept of the basic principles behind CI servers. You have like continuous integration servers are basically fancy job schedulers. You have like a server that waits for some triggers and then it carries out some action, which is probably a script, which is going to test or build or compile my code. And then I have release management servers that basically do the same thing based on a trigger. Maybe the build ran successfully or I clicked a button. I'm going to deploy that code on the dev or the test or the production server. Okay? This is basically how we move code from one place to another. I'm not saying you need to understand all of those tools, but having a basic concept of continuous integration, continuous delivery, that's important. Right, lean. I have like 3 minutes left. I can't explain everything that is in lean in a few minutes because it's a massive topic. Go read these books, okay? So the goal, the Phoenix project was recommended at the beginning of today. You need to read that. That is basically the Bible of DevOps. The book that inspired that was The Goal by Eli Goldratt. If you've read the Phoenix project and you want the next book, The Goal, highly recommended. It talks about lean, the theory of constraints, just-in-time production in the context of manufacturing. What the Phoenix project does is it basically copies that book but puts it in the context of a software development organization. Well, a software development team within a manufacturing organization. But actually, so much of what it's talking about there is actually fundamentally the theory of constraints, which is basically a different economy to the way that we manage software that focuses on small batch sizes rather than big batch sizes, building quality in, not overproducing stuff. And we want to take those ideas and those concepts and apply them to the way that we build stuff as engineers. The Toyota way, so the goal is written in kind of the narrative story style of a hypothetical satire of a manufacturing plant where everything is going wrong. And it's quite funny, even if there are a few points in it where he has comments that possibly a slightly 1980s view of gender stereotypes, which I'm not particularly promoting. I struggle with those a bit, but the way that he explains kind of the theory of constraints is actually really good. So make of that what you will. The Toyota Way is a very, very boring book that explains in very, very factual terms and boasts an awful lot about how good Toyota is, but it helps to express in a management-y, boring way the same thing. Case study time. This is a company called Farm Credit Services of America, and what they used to have is a shared dev database. How many people here have a shared dev database? Excellent. You don't need to worry about moving to dedicated databases then, because you're already doing that, and hopefully using tools like Docker or PS Database Clone or SQL Clone, Redgate are our sponsors, yay, thank you, to help provision those local databases. We basically want to move to a point where all the developers are working on their own local sandboxes because that helps them to isolate different pieces of work better from each other. On the subject of isolating different pieces of work from each other, who here struggles to release their stuff because they're batching together 150 features into one thing that is going to be released on the 1st of October? Does that cause problems? It causes all sorts of problems because stuff is delayed because I can't ship my feature because you're still working on your feature. It means that I end up with this big complicated deployment and something goes wrong. Well, was it my feature that broke it? Was it your feature that broke it? Was it kind of some complicated in-betweeny thing because it kind of did, I want to be shipping in small, I want to be shipping the features when they're ready, and the way that we do that is with branching, and the way that we do that is with Git and source control, so you kind of need to understand that. This screenshot is from a blog post which basically was a blog post that kicked off the Git flow way of working. Branching is a flame war. You might have different opinions about branching plans. You're welcome to them. I don't care. Have a flame war with me afterwards. There are all sorts of different plans. I don't promote one over another, but that's a nice image that kind of gets the point of what branching is. You've probably all seen this meme before, right? To make a mistake on production is human, but to deploy that to 1,000 servers is DevOps. The way that we stop that is by testing. How many of you are testing, unit testing your store procedures, your functions, your logic in your databases? 1, 2. And a shake of the head, he changed his mind afterwards. You wouldn't get a job as a .NET developer or a C# developer if you came up and said, I don't believe in testing, and I don't know how to do it. But somehow we get away with that as database developers, and we should be ashamed of ourselves. There are all sorts of testing frameworks that are available. T-SQL-T is one, probably the most widely used for SQL Server. Whatever it is that you're building, whatever platform you're building, figure out what the testing frameworks are for it so that you can run those tests automatically. Because if I'm releasing 10 times a day, I don't have the time to go through those tests manually every single time before I release. I need it to run automatically. Expand, contract. Anybody come across this model of development? So the problem is I want zero downtime deployments, or I want to take, if you had this really, really big database feature that you can't ship yet because it's not ready and it all needs to go in one go, yeah, you need to break that down into smaller things that you can ship silently behind the scenes, and then it means that when you do your rollback, you're not actually making any database changes at all, you're making changes at the application layer. I'm at time. Metrics, you don't come to me to learn how to monitor your servers, because you go to other consultants for that, but you need to be monitoring them, and this is my sample Apollo 11 picture. Basically, we need to be tracking what's going right and wrong with respect to the polar bears, not with respect to errors in my system. And we need to be sharing that. I'm definitely not the person you get for data visualization. Look, I've put pie charts in there, but talk to somebody that's qualified to tell you how to visualize and democratize that data, because if the people on the shop floor are making decisions and testing stuff, continual experimentation and learning, you want them to have the data to make good decisions rather than standing on soapboxes. And a final word of warning, there are people that believe this. DBAs often had a bad rap when they were basically the gatekeepers and they said no all the time because they only cared about their division's objectives rather than saving the polar bears. So be careful if you're the person that's blocking the process. We want to be helping the process move faster. We don't want DBAs like this. We want DBAs that in those small cross-functional teams work with the developers to make sure they're fixing issues kind of within the development domain and putting in automation. What is it they're worried about? Fine, write a test for it. Add that to my build and release process. Be involved in that discussion. We don't want DBAs that are making hotfix changes on production and not telling the developers, because now we're not managing changes properly. We want DBAs that know how to use Git and can communicate with changes and manage hotfixes and things using branching in Git, because that's a way that allows them to collaborate and so on. So I'm not saying DBAs are going to die. DBAs are still very much needed, or data people are needed. I mean, in the world of AI and machine learning and stuff, we're dealing with large amounts of data. We need to know how to manage it. The people that know how to manage that are the skills with large data. We need those people. But we might need to reframe the way that they work. This is the sales bit. If you want help from me to automate your deployments, and come talk to me afterwards. This is a summary of basically everything I said you need to learn. Any questions? Did I miss anything? Is there something that I missed off that's really, really important that you need to learn? And I hope that now when you look at that list, you see how it helps you save the polar bears. Thank you.
In really large organizations,
can I throw this at you? It's a microphone that I can throw at you. I'm not going to get a place on the sports team.
Is this...
Yay!
Wow, this is great. So in really large organizations that have a big legacy estate and potentially have a huge service...
Sorry, I'm just distracted by the subtitles.
What did it...
I'm glad that's got... I just had to say something because I probably broke your code of conduct.
That have a huge legacy estate and potentially a whole service operations team that look after the legacy estate, and then perhaps a sort of modern app development team, perhaps DevOps, and they're developing apps and they're cross-functional and they're supporting it. But I see that there is a real tension between the sort of the old and the new. And in a large organization, I can't see how to reconcile that. What's your view on it?
Yeah, that's really true. And for me, it comes back to did everybody hear the question okay? Cool, fantastic. So for me, you have an old legacy product, and you have new products that work differently and are possibly easier to maintain because you're doing all the DevOps things. And you've got different people responsible for each one. It feels to me that whether or not your product is a legacy product or not, the basic principles of work together cross-functionally and try and kind of that way of working, regardless of whether you're dealing with legacy issues or whether you're in a nice, exciting greenfield project, the same principles are still true. Like, your company simultaneously needs to ship updates and not break stuff. And so whether you're dealing with a legacy application or not, DevOps isn't the thing you do, it's the way that you work together. And so I would be suggesting that and possibly having separate teams responsible for the different things, if they're very segregated, is kind of okay, because we kind of want to have teams for products and services. But if you need to collaborate, then you need kind of a shared way of doing that. So to me, that's a people problem. Who is your lowest common line manager?
Very high. Yeah, in the organization that I'm thinking, yeah.
So there's your problem. How do you fix it? I don't know. Off the top of my head, try and take that person out for a steak dinner and kind of try to explain the benefits to them in words that they understand. I don't know.
Okie dokie. We're going to switch over to Harry.
Sorry, I overran, folks.